All right. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another RDU Buzz. Thank y'all for tuning in tonight. Um, Cindy is not feeling too well at the moment, so she may be joining later. She may not be. That's why I have two chairs. I'm just sitting in the middle of them right now. But um, we appreciate y'all joining. Make sure to put in the comments where you're joining from. Looks like Tom is ahead of the curve. Hello, Tom from South Florida. Thanks so much for tuning in. So yeah, if you are joining, make sure to put in the comments where you're joining from. One, it's just interesting to see where folks join from, and then two, it just helps us as we put together this content for y'all. So it helps us make sure we're putting together content that's actually hopefully helpful for you. Um, and we got Next Level joining in from Raleigh. Thanks so much for tuning in, Next Level. Hope y'all have had a good week so far. So, before we kick it off tonight, just one little housekeeping item. Next week, we will not have a live. We'll be out of town a little bit next week. So, for the Memorial Day holiday, but we'll be back the following week. So anyway, hope y'all have a great long weekend. But I'll mention that again at the end. But tonight, I wanted to dig into a topic that honestly we've wanted to cover for a while and have thought about it, but didn't do anything. And that is what is happening with the Apple campus. Obviously, they announced back in 2021, I think, was when the announcement took place. I believe it was April 2021 that Apple was moving to the area, and still to this day there has been nothing that has taken place on the ground that Apple owns within the Research Triangle Park. And looks like we've got some folks joining from Belfast, but moving to Holly Springs in about a month. That is awesome. That is awesome. Well, thanks for watching from Belfast. You definitely get the furthest award tonight. So far at least, but most likely at the end of this you also have it. Um but yeah, so Apple announced several years ago they're going to build a campus here. And that was going to take place within the Research Triangle Park. So the Research Triangle Park, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, it is basically a corporate park, for lack of a better way to describe it, that's within the middle of Durham and Raleigh. So it's kind of in this central location. It houses roughly 300 companies. And it's just the economic powerhouse in our region. And Apple announced they're going to open a campus on the Wake County side of the Research Triangle Park. But obviously nothing's come to pass so far. And so the question is, what's going on? Is it Apple that's slowing the process down? Is it Wake County that's slowing the process down? And the Triangle Business Journal put out a really good article this week, and that's where I want to start tonight. And then I've got a little bit more information that we can kind of plug through as well. Looks like we've got Richard joining from Los Angeles. And we've got Stray Designs, who's a software engineer. So very interested in what's going on with Apple. And then we got Earl joining in from Massachusetts, expecting to move to Nightdale soon. Very cool. Well, thanks so much for tuning in. And it's interesting. So this is kind of a side point, but we've helped a couple folks from Apple relocate from California into the area, and they're still hiring here. They have a location in Cary. I believe it's I forget the location that they're at, but it's in Cary. And they're hiring a decent amount there. And so Apple still does have a really good presence in the region. They just haven't broken ground on the area that they own within the Research Triangle Park. So the Triangle Business Journal, they did a fantastic article. It came out May 20th. So just a couple of days ago. This is what kind of spurred it on of like, okay, we ought to do a story on this. And they interviewed a couple folks from Wake County, and Wake County basically said this isn't our decision on we haven't been the ones to slow this down. This is essentially on Apple. And I looked it up, and I'll share this. I mean, this is all public record stuff. You can find this um, through Wake County's website. So this is essentially the permit portal through Wake County. And something that the article said is this right here, that the latest step in the process is essentially on hold, and that there's customer action required, which essentially means Apple needs to take additional steps for things to move forward, for permits to be issued, and until permits are issued, dirt can't be moved. And so that's essentially where we are with Apple right now. Apple hasn't taken the steps according to this article, and according to what we're seeing on the permit side of things with the Wake County. They haven't taken the necessary steps to get the permits issued to them so they can begin to move dirt and actually build their campus. Why that is, I have no idea. It could be. I mean, I would love to hear y'all's thoughts on it. My assumption is maybe with some things going on with the tech industry, maybe Apple is kind of slowing down a bit. But they're still hiring in the region. So I think the expectation is, and still should be, that Apple is going to do exactly what they said they're going to do, and that is to build the campus within the Research Triangle Park. I was reading a little further today and read some estimates of construction happening by 2026. So obviously that's 2 years from now. And maybe that is the case. But the fact of the matter is, it's on hold right now, and nothing's really happening. And just to kind of show you where I got this, so this right here is essentially where Apple owns this kind of yellow outlined area here in the Research Triangle Park. Again, this is all public record. You can find this GIS maps on Wake County's website. You can dig all this up yourself, the permit information yourself. But yeah, I mean, it's really fascinating. My hunch is maybe things slow down with the way the economy kind of slowed down over the last several years, and with where inflation's been, especially with how the tech industry has been hit. A lot of the tech companies were hit with pretty hefty layoffs, and so maybe that has impacted the speed in which they're building this campus. But at the end of the day, I think nothing has been said that this is not happening. So I think the expectation should be that this is still something that's going to happen. And Apple has received a lot of incentives for this as well from the state of North Carolina. And so I don't think their slowness is necessarily a sign of it not happening. I just think maybe it's just a sign of economic uncertainty. So yeah, I would love to know y'all's thoughts on it, but I think at the end of the day, I think this is probably just a business decision on Apple's part. I think maybe it would be more concerning if Apple wasn't actively hiring in the area, didn't have a decent presence already here in the area that seems to be growing. I think maybe it would be more of a concern if that wasn't happening. But I mean, we're already seeing impacts. The economy changing always has impacts on things that are taking place, and one that we just saw was VinFast. They're building a manufacturing plant. They're the Vietnamese electric vehicle company that's building a manufacturing plant in Chatham County. And they've actually reduced the footprint of what that manufacturing plant was originally supposed to be. So things like that do happen. You get these big announcements and they're really shiny, they're really nice looking, and then it kind of looks different at the end compared to what was announced. But nothing has, outside of when this was initially announced, nothing else has really been said. It's just time has just kind of passed and nothing's really happened. So it'll be fascinating to kind of see it play out. But at the end of the day, no dirt's been moved, no permits have been issued, and the land just still sits there. So let me see. I want to see some of these comments. Stray Zines said, the roles I see they're interested in hiring are more junior level people. Plus, they're looking at hardware, not software focused. It feels, and this is my opinion, but interest rates affect the hiring. Yeah. And then he followed up, said they're hiring very, very senior roles, but for training junior roles. That's interesting. Yeah. And I did see where it was like, AI, because they're the focus is, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure the focus of this particular campus that they're building, one of the focuses is going to be artificial intelligence, AI. And I did see some roles that look like for AI internships, and so that's kind of in line with what you're saying. It said per chat GPT, possible 2026 start. Some reports suggest construction might not begin until 2026. Yeah, and that's I mean that's something I was reading today as well. That we might not see construction starting until 2026. And typically permits have an expiration date, and so if they're not starting until 2026, it makes sense why they're not pushing forward with the permitting process. And then Nick asked, have there been any updates on Wegmans planned for Holly Springs? I'm not aware of any updates for the Wegmans in Holly Springs. So if there have been any, I haven't heard any. That'd be really cool. Holly Springs would be, I think, a prime location for Wegmans. We're actually out in Holly Springs today, filming an upcoming video, and I love the Holly Springs area, and Holly Springs would be absolutely perfect for Wegmans. So, but yeah, I haven't heard any updates on that. So, um, but yeah, I mean, Apple coming to the area, I think the assumption should be, the expectation should be Apple's going to follow through with what they said they're going to do, which is build a campus here that's going to bring quite a few jobs, 3,000 jobs to be exact. It just hasn't happened yet, and so maybe 2026 is the magic number, or the magic date. If it is, and we should start seeing signs of that, you know, as we move closer, into 2025. So hopefully we do begin to see that. But all right. Let me know if y'all got any more questions about the Apple stuff. And there's other projects too that have been almost paused in the area as well. I think Epic Games is one of them. Epic Games bought a mall in Cary and demolished most of it, and that was where they're going to build their headquarters. And I mean, that was years ago, and that thing is still sitting there with nothing happening. I have no idea what Epic Games is waiting for. Epic Games is the difference between Epic Games and Apple. Those Epic Games is headquartered here in Cary, whereas obviously Apple's headquartered out in California, and so I have absolutely no idea what's slowing that process down. But that was something that was promised a long time ago that also seems to be slowing down. And the point about interest rates, I mean that's a real thing, and that's something you're seeing on the commercial side. You're seeing a lot of these large developments that were promised and probably still are going to take place. It's just going to take longer for them to start because, sorry, Nick, I kept your comment up there forever. Because of where interest rates are. And obviously, it's just significantly more expensive to build today than it was several years ago. And so, a development like downtown Raleigh South, or Raleigh South, I forget what they call it, but that development is going to be transformative on the southern side of Raleigh. It's going to have, from my understanding, a pretty similar feel to what you have in North Hills. The same developer as North Hills, but that project has essentially been slowed down because of where interest rates are. And so, yeah, I mean, it's had a very wide reaching effect, and that very well could be what we're seeing right now. And Stray Zion says, yep, you're right about AI focus, but I think it might be focused on the building of circuits and chips for running AI models on. Okay, very cool. And then Tom says the company already operates a data center in the state, has solar farms. Yeah. So Catawba County, which is in central North Carolina, so more of like the Charlotte area, they have a massive data center there, and to my knowledge, they're actively expanding that data center currently. So yeah, they have a massive presence in Catawba County. So and that's something that they're actively growing even now. Whereas this is paused, they're actively expanding that. So yeah, they have a huge presence there. So All right. Moving on from Apple, a new study came out with US News and Milken Institute, and it listed the Milken listed the best performing cities, and US News just listed the essentially the best places to live. And so we'll start with Milken. On this study, Raleigh came in at number two, so which is pretty cool. Let me share the screen here. All right. So Raleigh was obviously so this is kind of broken down into two main categories. You had large cities and then you had small cities. And so obviously Raleigh fell into the large city category. But number one was Austin, which, Raleigh and Austin, I feel like kind of continually compete against each other on these lists. But number two on the list was Raleigh. So Raleigh performed really well on this. And a lot of different areas that they performed well in: wage growth, um, you know, uh, uh, housing affordability cost, GDP growth. So Raleigh in general performed incredibly well on this. One thing though that that kind of stood out to me down here, this area focus, um, it essentially says slowing GDP and job growth 2022 to 2023 amid high commercial vacancy rates and a potential surplus of workers might present challenges as Raleigh continues to build the housing and infrastructure to support its growth. So I found that kind of interesting. Almost like not 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 a warning, but just a little bit of caution with our growth. I thought that was kind of a fascinating take on it. But this idea of a surplus of workers might present challenges. So I'm taking that as they're saying, that there might not be. I don't know. There might. I guess they're saying there might not be enough jobs here for folks. Um, but anyway, I thought this was fascinating. But all in all, Raleigh performed really well, and I mean these lists are pretty typical every time. Salt Lake City's typically on them, Boise's typically on them, Raleigh, Austin. Um, Now the U.S. News, which we'll go to now, Raleigh dropped. I believe Raleigh last year was number two, and this year they are number six. And we've been outpaced by Charlotte on this list. So Charlotte came in at number five in the country's best cities to live in, and Raleigh came in at number six. The difference is, so if you look at kind of this breakdown here, the difference is the value. So US News is saying that Charlotte is a better value to live in than Raleigh. And if you look at their median home price, they're right. They're right. And so, on here it says the median home price in Raleigh is 382. Now, that that's probably every area around Raleigh. That's not Raleigh specifically. You'd be very hard pressed to find a home in Raleigh at that price point. That's probably including far reaching areas within the metro. Um, But comparing this to what they said Charlotte's was 350. And so obviously that's a $30,000 median difference between the home prices, and relatively, the income level and all of those things are relatively similar in Raleigh and Charlotte. But the difference was the median home price. So essentially what gave Charlotte the edge over Raleigh in this study, what gave Charlotte number five and Raleigh number six, was the fact that housing is more expensive here than in the Charlotte region. Yeah, I know very, very little about housing in Charlotte. When I lived in the Charlotte region, I was a kid. I was not concerned about the price of homes. I have absolutely no clue, in terms of like Charlotte real estate, what that looks like. But yeah, I thought all in all, um, it was interesting. But my impression of Charlotte, I love the Raleigh area much, much, much better than I ever loved the Charlotte area. Um, I just I just think this area is just much more unique in my opinion. Um, each city has its own flair, but it is what it is. So Charlotte number 5, Raleigh is number 6. But there were a good number. I'll go back to this list here. There were a good number of cities that edged out. I think the first one really shocked me. What was it? Naples. That's it. That really shocks me because Naples is not cheap. Naples is really expensive. So the fact that Naples is listed on here as the best place to live in the country, really kind of surprised me. Obviously, Boise, we saw Boise on the other list. So some of these make a lot of sense. Greenville, South Carolina makes sense. Greenville's a great area, but Raleigh coming in at number 6. So yeah, and I think we were number 2 last year on this. So we kind of fell back a few spots. So Tom said, he said, as of May 2024, the unemployment rate is 3.6 in Raleigh, 3.6 in Raleigh, Wake County, and 3.9 in the U.S. Okay, no, that's a really good stat to know. Yeah, so all in all, I mean, these reports, I mean, you take them for a grain of salt, right? But Raleigh is consistently ranking up there in the top 10, top 5 places to live in the country. And for good reason. We're still, relatively speaking, an affordable market. People here tend to earn good wages. The economy here tends to be strong. It's just a good place in general to live, and that's reflected in these studies. So I think that's something that's going to be reflected in these studies for years to come. And again, I mean, people, kind of circling back to the Apple thing. That's kind of one of those things. It's just, Apple coming here is really, it's like a shiny object. Um, but this area, I don't think has to have Apple to be successful. It's been successful for a really long time without Apple. It's been a really great place to live for a long time without Apple. Apple coming here adds to that, and it's great for that. But it's not something that's ever really been necessary, I don't think, to make this area what it has always been, which is a great place to live. So, and yeah, I mean, these studies are coming out without Apple having a campus here. So, all right. So this is moving to the next story. This is really cool. So there is a company called Autoport that is opening I didn't even know this was a thing. Opening a luxury driving resort in Moore County. So this is down towards the Pinehurst area. So luxury driving resort is it's a resort that has a 3-mile driving course. So you can take essentially your really nice car, whatever that car is. And you can drive on this 3-mile driving course there. It's going to have a 20,000 square foot clubhouse with a restaurant. It's going to have an outdoor putting green. It's going to have a 50,000 square foot outdoor space with pickleball courts and a dog park, and a jogging exercise course. They're going to have, let me see, how many condos? They're going to have 150 condos ranging from 1,400 to 6,500 square feet. And it's going to be called the Uari Motorsports Park and Resort. And it's going to be a $100 million resort. This opening not too far from here. I've never heard of anything like this. I don't know if any other part of the country has something like this. But it's essentially a place where you can take your really nice car that goes really fast and kind of play with it on this 3-mile road course that they're going to have there. And then it's also going to have all these other additional recreational activities that essentially kind of make it like a golf club. But that's going to be not too far from here. And they are looking to open, it says plans to open car condo model units by the end of 2025 and the driving course. And then 80 more condo units by the end of 2026. So I mean, it's coming soon. So I think that's pretty straight straight design said, will a 2010 Honda Civic, will it fit in? I don't know if it will. I might try to take our minivan down there to see what we can do on that 3 mile course. But yeah, I mean, this is something that is I've never heard of. It's really unique. I love the concept. Um, they're going to have 32 full time jobs, 10 part time jobs. So it's going to be a job producer. So yeah, I mean, this is the kind of stuff that I love to see, honestly, coming to our region because and I know I've mentioned this on some of the lives in the past, but I feel like our area kind of lacks in some of those entertainment options, some of those fun things to do, those unique things to do. Um, and this would be one of them. This is a really cool idea. So, um, yeah, let me know in the comments below if you have a really cool car that would fit in here, because we definitely do not. But I think this is a pretty cool idea. So Uari Motorsports Parks and Resort, and I love the name too because where I grew up was not too far from the Uari National Forest, which is this national forest and kind of like the central part of the state. It's an amazing area. I mean, it's just so much land and trails, and I don't know. I love the name because it reminds me of that. But and Stray Designs, I missed a question. Um, what moved Raleigh down a few places? Yeah, I I, I think it's home prices. I think it's lack of. I think that this area, just with how competitive the housing market has been, how many folks are moving here. It's made the housing market much more competitive. Um, and so as a result of that, I think it's driven home prices up. And it's pretty unique. And I was seeing some stories today about this, and they're spot on. If you look at the housing market nationwide right now, there's areas in the country. I mean, you think about, and I know we mentioned this on a live several weeks ago, Austin, Texas, being one specifically. There's areas down in Florida as well that they're buyers markets right now, essentially. I mean, there's a lot of inventory. The inventory is sitting on the market. Buyers can be very picky in the home they get because there's not a lot of competition. And so that, whereas a couple years ago we were in a housing market nationwide where, I mean, there were some nuances out there between markets and whatnot, but in general, you could look at the market nationwide and say it's a really hot market. It's a seller's market. But that's kind of starting to change where you have pockets of the country that are buyers markets, and you have pockets of the country like ours that are still sellers markets, and pretty strong ones. And so yeah, it's really fascinating. I kind of went on a tangent there with your question, but I think ultimately it is home prices that have kind of dropped Raleigh on that list. So, and then Crystal said she's got a 2010 Nissan Altima here. Yep. Yeah. Let me see. And sorry, I was missing some of these. We'll start Earl. Got 2012 Toyota RAV4. Nice, nice. And Tom, my wife and I are currently trying to decide between the Raleigh area versus Beaufort County, Hilton Head in terms of 55 plus community. Um, oh, that's a good question. I I would probably lean towards the beach, to be honest with you. I love Raleigh. I love the triangle. I mean, that's why we do what we do on these shows and these videos. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I think I would probably, and I'm sure, especially in the Hilton Head area, I'm sure I would guess the prices there are substantially higher than they are here. So obviously cost is a part of it. Um, but if you could pull it off, yeah, I think the Hilton Head area. I mean, that's a really really beautiful area. But obviously, our area, you're probably going to get more. I would assume you're going to get more bang for your buck. Um, and if you're open to driving to the beach, there's a lot of beaches here that are within driving distance. I mean, 2.5 hours or so driving distance. So, um, but yeah, no, I think I'd probably I'd probably choose the beach, to be honest with you. So that's a good question. Um, all right. Next up is we're kind of talking about the Pinehurst area. So there's a new interstate that's coming. I'm gonna share the screen so y'all can see it. So um right here, this line, obviously this map is terrible to show on the full screen because you can't see anything that's going on here, but kind of you've got Cary and like Raleigh's here. You got obviously Cary. Up here's Greensboro, and this is essentially going to connect the Greensboro area down through Siler City. So Siler City is technically where a lot of these manufacturing companies are going to in Chatham County, the VinFast and the Wolfspeed. So when we talk about those going into Pittsburgh, they're really going into the Siler City area. However, Pittsburgh is going to be a main beneficiary of those. It's going to cut through Sanford. It's going to continue down into Fayetteville. But this is a really big deal. So this interstate has been proposed for a while, and the funding for it was passed through the one of the infrastructure bills. I think that was recently passed in Congress. But this is essentially going to provide a direct link between Greensboro and Fayetteville. But I think in general, though, this is going to help benefit parts of the triangle as well, because it's going to allow quicker access between different points. And I mean, from even from like an investment standpoint, you think about like real estate investment. I mean, there's a lot of areas down here on this southern side. Like we don't really do business in most of these southern areas, like the Sanfords or anything like that. But if you're thinking of like real estate investments, like exploring areas that are going to be off of, you know, that they're going to essentially experience growth from a new interstate being added through their area. So yeah, I thought this was interesting. It doesn't directly impact the triangle, but it's going to impact it enough that it's at least worth talking about. There's going to be a new interstate that comes essentially on the southern side of the triangle, but it will impact parts of Chatham County. Obviously, Chatham County will be, and Pittsburgh will be impacted by that. So yeah, definitely worth knowing. And then the last thing on here before I get off and to make sure Cindy's feeling okay is Wawa. So let me know in the comments below if you have ever been to a Wawa. It's a gas station. I've only been one time. It was up in New Jersey. I was at a military training event, and I had a rental van, and I went to go fill it up at and the Wawa was there. It's kind of like for those of you who are here, it kind of reminded me of a Sheetz, I guess, a Sheetz gas station. But anyway, they I didn't even go inside. So in New Jersey, they have a law about, you know, you have to pump your own, or someone has to pump the gas for you, I think, because somebody walked up and pumped the gas. And so I didn't even go inside. And so I don't know much about it, but it's apparently it's a really big deal. But they're opening quite a few of these throughout North Carolina. So I think for the next 10 years, they're going to open up, I think they said like 6 to 8 Wawas throughout the state. It looks like they're starting on the east side. So there's not too many that are coming into our area this year. I think the closest area to us is going to be Wilson, which is further east of the triangle. But ultimately, I'm sure they're going to be working. They're working west. But anyway, I mean, they say it's kind of like a Buc-ee's, but Tom said Wawa is a 7-Eleven on on steroids. I think they're famous for their subs. I think if I remember correctly, Earl said that he's been to one in Philly. But yeah, so anyway, I think that's it's going to be interesting because I obviously Sheets is kind of the big gas station here. Obviously, we're getting a Bucky's in Mebane, but that's only one gas station. Sheets is like the main kind of nice, nice in quotation marks gas station in our area. Wawa, I guess, will be their main competitor. But to build, I mean, they're building, 6 to 8 a year over the next decade in North Carolina. I mean, that's significant. So uh, I thought that was interesting. They have a cult following, so anybody from the Northeast who sees a Wawa here, maybe that might excite them. So, got a couple questions that I'll answer here. Any thoughts on Sanctuary at Lake Wheeler Community and Jordan Point in New Hill? Any pros and cons on those locations? So, Sanctuary at Lake Wheeler, I think I've only driven through that one time. That region of Raleigh, if that's the same neighborhood that I'm thinking of, that region um, in South Raleigh is beautiful. It's a really that's a really 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 beautiful part of Raleigh. So in general, I say I prefer North Raleigh over South Raleigh. That general area is kind of an exception to that. It's just naturally a really beautiful area. The New Hill area, New Hill's had a lot of growth, and obviously it's because things are pushing out past the apex area. So yeah, I mean, I don't think you can go wrong with either one of those areas. New Hill, South Raleigh, both are fantastic. So and Crystal, um, let me see, and Tom, I think you said, yeah, you said the beach. The beach is not that important, leaving South Florida. And then Crystal said, we found it a good compromise to get to the beach in 2 hours for a weekend. Um, yeah, the house is really, really affordable. So, yeah, I mean, if beach access isn't that big of a deal, um, yeah, I mean, Raleigh makes a lot of sense. I mean, in Raleigh, you're going to have access to, I think, much more in general than you would in some of those coastal towns, just by nature of the size of our area. So, um, and I mean, 55 and up communities are, I mean, they're going in all over the place, and so you're going to have a lot of options with 55 and up communities. Really, really, really anywhere, honestly, and in pretty much any town within the triangle, you can find either a 55 and up community that's been there or a 55 and up community that's currently being built. So I think you'd have a lot of options, and if access to the beach is not a big deal, I think Raleigh would probably afford a lot more options in the area than some of those other places. So, um, but cool. Well, thank y'all for tuning in. I will see y'all not next week. Again, next week we will not be here. Next week we'll be out of town. So there will be no live next Thursday. But we will be back the Thursday after, whatever Thursday that is. I'm guessing that's whatever I guess the first Thursday in June is. So anyway, I hope y'all have a wonderful Memorial Day weekend, and I will see y'all here next time. Bye, y'all.